In the grand halls of the capital of Cardinia, the air is thick with a tension that even the most seasoned politicians find suffocating. Inside Branford's private office, the silence is shattered by the trembling voice of Marquis Morris Macquarie. He stands paralyzed, clutching a report as if it were a death warrant, his face pale with disbelief. He stammers, asking if his ears have deceived him. Is it truly possible that the Baron of Fenris is being hailed as the best sword of the North? Standing before him, a member of the Golden Guard remains stoic, confirming the news with cold, hard facts. He explains that the Fenris Knights have displayed a level of raw power and unshakable loyalty that completely eclipses even the legendary Knights of the Two Wings. He goes on to describe their exclusive mage, whose magical prowess is said to rival even Willow, a master of the Sixth Circle. But the most terrifying detail is the individual strength of Baron Ghislain, Fenris himself. The guard confirms that Ghislain has ascended to the level of a true master, possessing a force that makes his new title not just a nickname, but an absolute reality. Rosalind, her heart pounding in her chest, leans forward with a look of pure concern. She asks if Ghislain is safe, her voice small amidst the political giants in the room. The guard reassures her, noting that the Baron is currently overseeing the aftermath of the battle and is already making strategic moves to absorb the entirety of Count Desmond's territory. This news sends Morris into another spiral of shock. To take the land as well? It is a bold, almost predatory move. Sir Bilor Norton lets out a hearty, booming laugh, remarking that this is exactly what he expected from such a formidable man. Count Aylesbury nods in grim agreement, stating that from this moment on, it is no exaggeration to say that the Fenris household is now the undisputed powerhouse of the North. However, the rapid ascent of a new hero doesn't sit well with everyone. Marquis Morris, his eyes darting around the room, suggests that perhaps Ghislain is growing a bit too fast for comfort. He wonders aloud if they should find a way to rein him in, to put a leash on this rising star before he becomes untamable. Rosalind is sharp with her response, asking him exactly what he means by restraining a hero of the kingdom. Morris, caught off guard by her directness, tries to justify his fear. He argues that Ghislain has always been the type to ignore orders and act on his own whims. If he becomes the great lord of the North, Morris fears no one will be able to control him. He reminds the room that their faction's goal was for Ghislain to keep the North in check, not to become its sole, absolute ruler. Tolio steps in to support the Marquis's logic, suggesting that a tactical adjustment might be necessary to ensure Ghislain remains a useful tool for the Pro-Prince faction. But Branford silences the room with a single, sharp word: impossible. He declares that Baron Fenris is their strongest shield against the looming threat of the duchy. To him, these petty internal power struggles are distractions. Their true enemy is the Delphine Duchy, and nothing else matters. Sir Bilor Norton turns to Morris with a warning that carries the weight of steel, telling him never to touch the Baron under any circumstances. To soften the blow, he adds that the victory wasn't Ghislain's alone. It was won thanks to the support of the royal army and the Protean troops. Aiden quickly jumps on the opportunity to flatter the Marquis, claiming that without the Macquarie army, the battle would have been a disaster. Morris, vanity finally winning over his fear, puffs out his chest. He agrees, feigning a sense of modesty while internally taking all the credit for a victory he had nothing to do with. Satisfied that the egos in the room have been managed, Branford adjourns the meeting. Once the office clears, Branford's expression darkens. He orders Tolio to bring in Count Foud. The Count, who had been kept under lock and key while the fate of the North was decided, enters the room looking weary but sharp. He takes one look at Branford, and correctly guesses that since he is being released, Ghislain must have won. Branford tells him he is free to go, warning him to tell the other duchy-aligned nobles to behave themselves to avoid another unpleasant incident. Foud stands in silence for a moment, the tension between them crackling, before he drops a chilling prophecy. He tells Branford that he has made a fatal error. By allowing Count Desmond to die, the delicate balance of the kingdom has been shattered. The civil war they all feared is no longer a possibility, it is now a certainty. Branford tries to dismiss the Count's words, claiming that the Pro-Prince faction is the only thing keeping the peace. But Foud scoffs, telling him that it was never the faction holding back the tides of war, it was the duchy itself. He points out the tragic reality of their king, who lies bedridden and helpless, a mere puppet for the Marquis's ambitions. He asks Branford if there is anything left in this kingdom that doesn't bow to his will. The insult hits home, and Branford explodes in rage, ordering the Count to shut his mouth. Guards instantly pin Foud against the wall, blades pressed against his throat. Even as he trembles with fear, Foud leaves them with one final warning: they have forgotten the true nature of Duke Delphine. He insists that his side only wanted to prevent the bloodbath that is now inevitable. As the guards drag Foud away, Branford is left alone in the darkening office. His mind drifts back to a time long ago, to a flashback where he and the younger Duke Delphine stood together as something resembling friends. In the memory, Delphine asks with a detached curiosity if power and politics really matter in a world where everything eventually turns to dust. Branford had argued that those things are what give life meaning, as their choices determine the survival of thousands. But Delphine wasn't listening. He was watching a line of ants moving across the dirt. With a cold, vacant expression, he mused about the pointlessness of creatures that don't live forever, before casually crushing the entire line under his boot. He told Branford that his eyes were set on something much further than human politics. Back in the present, Branford stares out into the night, whispering Delphine's name, realizing it has been far too long since they looked each other in the eye. The scene shifts far to the south, to the eclipsed castle of the Delphine Duchy. The fortress is a Gothic nightmare of jagged spires and oppressive shadows. Joseph walks down a long, cold corridor alongside Cayenne Balzac, his nerves visibly frayed. He asks if it's true that the Duke is furious. Cayenne confirms the grim reality, noting that while the Duke usually stays out of the details, the loss of Desmond has forced him to personally intervene. Joseph begins to sweat, the fear radiating off him in waves. Cayenne tries to offer a word of comfort, but Joseph snaps at him, trying to maintain a shred of dignity as they reach the towering doors of the audience chamber. The doors groan open to reveal a massive, cavernous room. At the far end, Duke Delphine sits on a throne, his back to the entrance. His unnaturally long hair spills over the back of the chair, and even from a distance, the sheer weight of his mana makes it hard to breathe. Cayenne and Joseph immediately drop to their knees, their foreheads nearly touching the cold stone floor. After a suffocating silence, the Duke's voice echoes through the hall. He asks if Desmond is truly dead. Joseph, his voice cracking, confirms that the Count fell to Baron Ghislain Fenris. The Duke repeats Ghislain's name, the words rolling off his tongue with a dangerous curiosity. He notes that the name has been popping up frequently of late. Joseph, desperate to save his own skin, begs for forgiveness, admitting he underestimated the boy's potential. The Duke ignores the apology and turns his attention to Cayenne, asking for a professional assessment of the Baron. Cayenne doesn't sugarcoat it. He tells the Duke that in the north, there is no one left who can match Ghislain, and if he is left to grow any further, he will become an unstoppable force. In a gesture that mirrors the chilling habits of a predator, the Duke begins to crack his knuckles, thumb against index finger, a rhythmic, haunting sound that echoes like a ticking clock. He tells Joseph that he has been patient, entrusting him with everything because he enjoyed the anticipation. But now, his dark aura begins to flood the room, turning the air into lead. The Duke's expression is a mask of shadowed malice as he declares that he is finally starting to feel thirsty for action. Joseph is nearly crushed by the pressure, gasping for air as the Duke asks if he is still clinging to his cautious plans. Joseph uses every ounce of strength he has left to argue that being too hasty could lead to disaster, but the Duke points out that they have already lost the north. In a final, desperate play, Joseph reveals that he has made contact with them. He promises that an envoy is coming, someone who will solve their problems and quench the Duke's thirst before it turns into a catastrophe. The Duke scoffs at Joseph's obsession with small, external powers, but he agrees to wait just a little longer. However, he warns them that the clock has run out of time. He dismisses them, and Joseph scrambles out of the room as fast as his legs can carry him. Cayenne follows, but not before glancing back at the Duke, who is now surrounded by a swirling vortex of dark energy. The Duke demands to be left alone, his fury manifesting as a physical force that shakes the very foundations of the castle. Days later, a new figure arrives at the eclipsed castle. This man walks with the quiet confidence of a god. He approaches the Duke and asks if the slaughter should begin immediately. The Duke looks out over his dark kingdom and tells him to wait, just a little while longer. The mysterious warrior is revealed to be Iden, one of the 7 legendary noble knights of the continent. He is the very man who ended Ghislain's life in the previous timeline, a shadow from the past that has finally returned to finish the job. Iden bows deeply, his voice a cold promise of the violence to come, as he accepts the Duke's command. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next